Welcome to this week's episode of Are You Brave Enough? Today I have my second guest, Susan Younger, who is also a very good friend of mine and an amazing woman. And she's going to be talking about her secret to Are You Brave Enough to Discover Your Authentic Self? Welcome to Are You Brave Enough to Discover Your Authentic Self? Joining me today is Susan K. Younger, relationship architect. Susan combines her unique experience in architecture, retail management, massage therapy, and consulting with scientifically validated personality tools and technology. With experience few leaders acquire, a life well lived, she unpacks difficult conversations using personality science with high tech and high touch. In her architectural career, she led teams building and renovating department stores, including Macy's and Bloomingdale's, and as a consultant to Sephora, Palisson RTKL, Genpact, and others. She has worked with B.A.N.K, B.A.N.K, personality profiling methodology since 2015, including Codebreakers Technologies, AI tools, technology, training, and coaching programs. Please welcome Susan Younger.
Thank you. So delighted to be with you today, Karen.
Well, I'm excited to be with you too because I love the B.A.N.K profile. I've done my own B.A.N.K profile. And it's a really cool way to look at, at people and different people's personalities. I mean, it's more than just personalities though, right?
It isn't psychology based. It's what we say biology based, BUY. Why you buy into any idea, concept, or product. And when you start to wrap that around that decision making process, you start to understand that you can layer it in with any other system that's out there and take just a slight breath of fresh air kind of look at it, because you start to go, oh yeah, that's how I make a decision. And when you realize how you make a decision, sometimes you go, well, no wonder I stumbled over that.
Yeah, which is really cool. And one of the things about decision making is there's often risks in decision
Oh,
making. So we're going to talk a little bit about risks today. And the first thing I'm going to ask you is what's the biggest risk you've taken in your life, Susan?
which one? You know, the I turned down the very first architectural job that was offered to me, a company I had interviewed with and done a summer internship with between my junior and senior year of college. So I had a ready-made opportunity to know what I was going to do. And I said, no, thank you. I want to go explore interior architecture. And well, guess what? I this was in the 70s, and much like what has happened of late, all of a sudden things changed. The oil embargo hit. There were no jobs in the field of architecture relating to what I wanted to do. And I had to go back and ask if they would, months later say, I know you hired somebody else that worked with me in college. Is there any chance you'd take me on even part time? And another time, looking at things going awry, I finally was like, well, it's time to become an entrepreneur. And people were like, aren't you going to go get a job? And I'm like, no, I think I've been, relocated, uh, let go because of downsizing. So, I was the one they were like, you're the least tied to LA. We're going to let you go you'll find something. And you finally reach a point where you go, I have to trust what I need more than what everybody else needs.
Mm.
And you really have to believe in yourself and what you can accomplish. And sometimes the decision to make something happen means you're forced to face that sooner than later. You thought you knew what you were going to do, how much time it was going to take you. You were going to be able to have one foot in the company and start things. And all of a sudden, no, you are on your own again.
Yeah, and that can be really scary. So you kind of wove this into your story, but let's just pull out a little bit more what you really learned from this. So, I mean, obviously you learned to pivot. That clearly was one lesson that you learned from it. You learned that it was okay to do a do-over, right? Like
Oh,
you walked away and came back. And I think, that's a really valuable lesson for people because people think when they take risks, which obviously you took a lot of risks in
yeah,
various parts there, but people often think it's a permanent decision, right? And I think your story shows us that it's not.
it's not. And and even when I went back to work for them for 3 years, uh, later I was approached by a firm that I had interviewed with prior to that time, when nobody was hiring in Dallas. And again, this was long before there were cell phones. So all of this took place over letters. I wasn't even getting phone calls because, calling on the phone back then was, wow, that was expensive. So letters written back over 6 months about a job, and I turned them down saying, thank you for all this inquiry about me. I'm applying to grad school. I've got 3 years of experience behind me. And having experienced previously that I spent a lot of time interviewing for something that wasn't a real job, I said, I'm looking to take the skills I've developed and turn it into a career. If you do not have an opportunity that would allow me to leverage the skills I have and build into a career, I think we can just say thank you very much. And I'll wait to hear on which school I'll go to graduate school at. A week later, I had a brochure from the company. The guy said he'd come to Iowa to interview me. As it turned out, the reason he remembered me was the silly thing that his youth was spent 30 miles from where I lived. And he had turned to his assistant when they were ready to hire, and he says, somewhere in that pile in the file drawer, you will find a resume from a girl in Iowa. I don't remember her name, but in architecture at that point, there aren't that many girls, but he knew he could believe in what I could do. You know, Holy crap, that's not what you expect. And he
It,
hired me on the spot and relocated me to Dallas. So I
and
think
that's how
part of
you
it
ended
is,
up in Dallas.
yeah. And part of it is, again, trusting the fact that you know what you want. And instead of just begging for a job, be very clear on the fact that you have passion and purpose about creating something beyond just employment. And I
Yeah.
think what that showed them was that they could count on me to lead. They could count on me to, at times, say no to something that most people will not take the time to say no for fear of rejection. Instead of saying, no may be the most positive thing I could say at this moment.
Which I love. And last week's episode of Are You Brave Enough was exactly about that, talking about are you brave enough to say no? So I love how we're tying all these things together because there's so many little things in life that feel like big risks when they're really not. And if you look at your career, I mean, just reading your bio, you've done so many different things. You've gone back and forth. I mean, you're just incredible, all the different things you've tried over the years and then been able to like weave them together. So
Yeah.
right now, I know you're doing a bunch of different things, but I know one of the things that you do a lot of is B.A.N.K, which we talked about a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me how risk taking is either amplified or mitigated by using the bank code technology.
What's beautiful about using the bank code technology is in LinkedIn with our one button push, I can see what, as we say, what bank code your profile is written in. So even if I haven't had a conversation with you, I can get some sense of how you have presented yourself to the world. And as you see behind my name is an NAKB, which stands for Nurturing Action, Knowledge, and Blueprint. So if somebody's profile comes up as blueprint first, that's the code I turn to the least. It tells me I have to bring up that part of myself and think about the values that are important to that person from a different point of view, from a different perspective than me, and can allow me to shortcut how I get to know them or maybe not turn them off completely by being the spastic me that would just irritate the heck out of them. You know, those sort of things. And then the other part of it is you start to realize you hear the code spoken from everybody, whether they're matching their exact code or they're telling you something right now is stressing them. So they're speaking from another component of their code. We talk about dancing with your code. It doesn't put you in a box. And frequently, once somebody has done a profile on you, they decide you are in a row and that's one direction you have to go. And I am just not a one direction girl. So it was a great way for me to have a way to look at what I have always done in terms of engaging with others and trying to understand where they're at in the moment instead of assume that they were something because of what they've been in the past.
And I love that because I hate being in boxes. I mean, freedom is
Yes,
one of my core
yes.
values. Like
One
I
of
know
your
it
key
is
values.
yours. One of the reasons we get along so well.
Yes.
And I hate being putting in boxes. And I love tools that help us um,
Mm.
discover our authentic self. And
Yeah,
really, that's what bank. I mean, a lot of tools do that.
a
And
lot.
if we use them as tools instead of use them as boxes, and I love
Yeah,
the way you're differentiating that, it helps us pull out nuances in
yeah,
ourselves that we might not otherwise see. And that's what I always see in you
yeah.
is someone who is looking for the uniqueness and the authenticity in people and trying to pull that out rather than put them in boxes, even though you're
Yeah.
dealing with a tool.
Structure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and even doing the architectural buildings, people would have thought, oh, you must be blueprint because you meet timelines. The structure and the system, the process for doing that is fairly, I wouldn't say rigid, but fairly well defined. And because of that, those were factors in business I knew I had to meet. I didn't meet them because I got joy from doing those. I did them because they served the community that was working on this project together. They served the company that I was really thrilled to be part of. And it made the communication between the contractors, the suppliers, and those of us at the department store much more fun because we were respectful of what each person brought to the team. I could listen to a contractor talk about the detail of how something went together that somebody else would go blah blah blah. And I'm like going, no, I can learn from him and that may help me design something better the next time because I'm figuring out how I could have shortcut what it took for him to build it. Or did I think about how much material he needed or how much material I was wasting by approaching it from a different standpoint. And all these things come together where you start to have a respect for how they're looking at things in a way you never would have thought about on your own.
absolutely. And I love that. And I think that's so valuable because we tend to, I mean, one of the things that we always do is we assume that other people have the same values, the same strengths, the same perspective as we do, which of course they don't. And why we assume that, I have no idea, but it's just human nature, right? I mean, it's
That
really
narrow
just
focus.
it's just human nature. But when you can use tools to get outside of that box and be able to
Mhm.
value something in someone that maybe you're not as good at, or
Oh, yeah.
maybe you can learn to be better at. And I think it, one of the
Yeah.
things that I'm hearing in what you say when we talk about recognizing other people's uniqueness is a lot of times people are threatened because they think they have to be the best at everything. It actually feels
Mm.
risky to acknowledge, hey, someone else has this strength and together we work together, because somehow we learn that we are supposed to have all the answers and we're supposed to be able to do everything well, which of course is crazy. But again, I think it's one of those things that we're sort of taught as children. You're supposed to be good at all the subjects in school. You're supposed to be good at sports. You're supposed to be good at music, and that goes into the workplace, right? You're supposed to be good at all aspects of your job. But
And
sometimes
and
that's not true.
and people feel threatened when they meet somebody that's good at something, even if it's your best skill. instead of looking at the fact that you might partner with somebody that's even better at it than you are, that together you might come up with an even more incredible solution because they bring in a component that's slightly different than yours, but you're doing it together.
Yeah.
You shortcut what you could have accomplished faster. And well, I should say you shortcut's not the right word there. You end up, in a sense, crashing what could have been a shortcut that would have really expanded things for you beautifully. I know in massage with my other therapists that I know, we may have trained in a lot of the same technologies around massage and modalities of work, yet each of us have a unique touch. And if we understand that, sometimes you want somebody else to get worked on by another therapist. I can send them to one of my other therapists and not be worried about losing them as a client because we work together in a very positive way on, if you go see this person, they're going to work with this on you, and this is going to help you to do that. And then they can come back to me and I can do what I was doing, and it might unlock something in a different way. In architecture, I would have architects that were like, oh, I don't, no, we don't look at the interiors that way. If that's where your focus is, or if you didn't finish and get your license, no, you can't work here. And I'm like, well, they're lost, because I knew for me, it wasn't my best path to what I was doing. And even at a point when I could have gone and gotten a license in architecture, I was leading a department where I was the head of the department. I was hiring the architects. I would have actually had to pretend I was working for an architect that was in LA in order to fill out the licensing paper because I was directing the project. And it was like, I I don't think I need the license. And I had people go, well, you're making the wrong choice. And I'm like, for you, not for me. You have to understand that sometimes what authentically aligns with you being the best of you doesn't match up with everything else that everybody else has ever done or expects you to do. And what I love about using B.A.N.K is sometimes that allows me to explain to them why they see it as a necessary statement and why it isn't one for me. It doesn't
Love
change their
that.
mind. It doesn't make them wrong or make them right, but it allows us to both understand that from my point of view and what I'm doing, it's more important for me to continue growing, working with multiple architects and designers to create things where I get to lead the discussion about how this is going to frame up, how it's going to serve the store, how it's going to be something fun and exciting for us to work together on. Then for me to get a license so that I could do what? Geez, I'd be stepping back away from a position that's allowing me to be creative in order to get something in terms of initials behind my name. Hmm, okay, there's where that blueprint being last shows up for me. That would
Yeah.
be the credentials that somebody else is looking for. And that to me, we're like, not necessary. I, you know, I have done drawings that architects certify. They hire me to do the drawing and then they sign them. That means I know what I'm doing. I just
Of course, you
don't
know what
need to
you're
sign.
doing. Of
So you
course.
you start to look at things in different ways through this whole process. And this coming to this later in life for me was allowing me to unlock those things that I understood about myself and to be able to turn around and help others to unlock that about themselves and have those difficult conversations that they just didn't have a way to frame up. And when you
I
think of
love
all the
that. Yeah.
craziness in the world right now, where somebody's like, well, I can't talk to them, they don't think like me. I'm like, holy crap, isn't it the fact that they don't think like me? We need to talk to each other and figure out where the commonalities are. If we want things to move
Absolutely,
forward.
absolutely. And no, absolutely. And again, I love that theme of your life has been learning, taking risks, and doing things your way, really authentically and uniquely being yourself. And that's a huge risk in this
Yeah.
world. I mean, and I'm not sure. I mean, have you ever really framed it in your mind as risk taking, or is it um or have you, hold on, there was something weird went on with the video there. So I just want to back up just in case that actually got recorded. So so let's start with, have you ever really thought of yourself as a risk taker? Have you framed that as risk taking, or is that just the way you were?
A little of both. If you go way back, my mom was the one who was very much a fun, go out and have fun, take care of things. Uh, uh, Housewife, had horses, risk doing things for fun. Dad was in insurance. So I had kind of that very traditional side from dad, afraid of much change. And mom, on the other hand, let's go ride horses. I may have had back surgery. They may tell me if I get thrown off, but riding is what gives me that security in myself. I had all of that presented without it ever being told to me that was what it was. On the other hand, from a very early point in life, because I knew I wanted to do architecture, I was constantly being challenged by people who said, well, what's your backup choice? Do you want to teach? Do you want to, what else might you do? And and I was like, no, I really want to do architecture. And what I was blessed with parents who encouraged me to do things and take the risk and ask the question. And sometimes the risk of asking that question seemed so daunting to me because I was shy. I was not what you
Mm.
would call this woohoo, go out and do it all. In fact, I think I may have told you at one point, Mom said if I hadn't been there for your birth, I wouldn't know you were my child. We are so different. Yet she never said it in a demeaning way. It was just in this curious statement of, aren't we unique? We owned that in ourselves. And what was surprising for me later on was to realize how few people had that, how
Mhm.
incredibly lucky I was
Yeah.
that I had parents who always were in the background saying, if that's what you want, you have to ask for it, you have to go for it. We're here to support you in your choices, but they're your choices. And
Mm.
so they encouraged me in high school to ask, because I went to a very small high school for my last 2 years. I went from a class of 600 to a class of 49. And and I was like, but now I'm not going to be able to do the things that I need to do to be prepped for architecture school. And dad and mom said, well, ask the teacher. Maybe he'll let you do it in study hall. Maybe he'll let you do the mechanical drawing. He did, and he began to like tell others when they finally let gals do what I did in that, in the standard of shop. He would tell the story of the girl who came and asked to do mechanical drawing.
There you
And
go.
so I was taking those kind of risks. I was always a little out, I was just always a little outside the norm. I wasn't the, class cheerleader or any of those sorts of things, little outside. So I think I always knew that there was um, a uniqueness to me and that it was okay. It may not always feel comfortable, and a lot of times it didn't. But on the other hand, it was me and I needed to own it. And that strength from mom and dad to always say, it doesn't hurt to ask. They're the
I
ones who
love that.
encouraged
Yep.
me to go and talk to the architectural firm when I got the internship with them during college and to go back and talk to them when I came back without a job from Texas after a month of searching for something elsewhere. It's like you can ask, your your no is only in your own mind. And so they were really good about encouraging me to think outside the box at times. And the tough conversations were always had at the dining table. So part of that for me was uh, not a learned, it was just what you did.
You did. Yeah. And I love that. I mean, and that shows up in who you are, and it shows up in how you value other people and you value their uniqueness too. So, thank you so much for sharing your story today. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach Susan Younger?
Uh, I'm on LinkedIn, and you want to make sure you put that K in there. So it's Susan K. Younger on LinkedIn. And then you can even just send an email to susan@skyounger.com. It's easier than giving out all the other stuff, and just start a
Absolutely.
conversation. Just start a
Absolutely.
conversation.
And Susan is a wonderful, warm, and welcoming woman. So if you've got any questions about B.A.N.K, you're even curious, just check in with her on LinkedIn or send her an email. I know she'll welcome you warmly because she does with everyone. So thank you, Susan, for being our guest
Oh,
today.
Karen, thank you. I always love my time with you, and our conversations always go in so many great directions. And your book is wonderful, and I can't wait for your second and your third. All this excitement for you. Thrilling. Thrilling
Yeah,
for
well,
that.
the second one's coming out in September, and I'm working on the third one. It's starting to unfold, so that's really
Awesome.
exciting. So anyway, thank you for joining us for Are You Brave Enough to Discover Your Authentic Self with Susan Younger. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you can join us every week for another episode of Are You Brave Enough? Loving this content? Are you brave enough to hit subscribe? I dare you to hit subscribe. Don't miss a single episode of Are You Brave Enough?